Lovina Zook is a popular content creator who makes mesmerizing videos on Amish cooking. Her videos get millions of views. She grew up in the Swartzentruber Amish world and left it when she was 18. She tells that story in a separate interview on my channel. This video is an account of a day of an Amish school day from morning to night. It's a record of the traditions and rhythms of Lovina's experience of Amish living. Hello, Lovina. How are you?
Hi, Frida. I'm very good. I love your name. The Amish in school have a little reading book that they have their reading books from grade to grade. And in the third grade, they have a reading book, and the main character in the reading book's name is Frida. Love that name.
What was the story about?
It was just about the trials of going through life as a kid, I guess, which is a lot of what Amish stories are about. Like, say they're afraid of something or they're being bullied or something like that, and how to overcome that and how to be a better person through all of that and how to not be afraid of everything. So one specific thing I remember about that story was her and her little brother were supposed to take lemonade out to the hayfield for her uncle and her father who were putting up hay, and it was a hot summer's day. So they were supposed to take the shortcuts through the meadows to go, and they had snakes, and she was so afraid to go across the meadows because of the snakes, but she faced her fears and went anyway. So it's basically a story about how you sometimes have to be brave and face your fears to help other people.
I love that. That's very interesting. I'm very interested in different cultures' children's stories, and
Uh-huh.
this is not a story about God. It's a story about childhood, which is very sweet and interesting.
Yeah.
Also, my mother gave me Frida as my legal name, but my name's actually
Okay.
Freidi. And when I became Americanized, I started
Yeah.
to call myself Frida, and it was very symbolic. My parents didn't like it when I started to call myself Frida.
As this before, is your native language English?
It's Yiddish. It's Yiddish,
Yiddish.
which
Okay,
you speak some version of German?
of German, yes, because I know Yiddish. I think Yiddish and Dutch and German kind of have some similarities, and that's kind of where the Amish language stems out of. We all Amish understand each other, but they still they have some have different versions of words than others.
How do you call the language?
If I'm speaking to someone from the non-Amish world, I usually just say Amish, but I guess if I'm speaking to someone, I guess I always say just Amish, but if I had to specify, I would say Pennsylvania German, because that's what a lot of people call it, because it originally comes from Pennsylvania, because that's where the first Amish settlers settled. Like when they first came to America, that's where they settled. They came over soon after William Penn was over here, because William Penn he was a Quaker, and he had the peaceful nation where they had freedom of religion and everything. So they came over because of that, because they wanted freedom
Because
of
they were
religion.
being persecuted.
Yeah, they were being persecuted in other countries. So yeah, I grew up my whole life reading horrible persecution stories about the people who are Amish or founded the Amish or whatever. So
Really? Was that a big part of your childhood?
it was, yeah, I feel like that's a big part of pretty much any Amish childhood, is reading a lot. Like, we have this big book called The Martyr's Mirror. It's yay thick and it's huge, it's heavy, and it's just filled with martyr stories of people who died for their faith. And those are the people who started the Amish. So
Interesting. Were you a big reader?
I love reading, yes. I'm a bookworm. I will read anything and everything.
Did you like school?
I loved school. I became a school teacher. I was an Amish school teacher for 3 years. So once you go through 8th grade, they only go from first to 8th grade. Once you go through 8th grade, they are basically educated enough to be a school teacher. And it's usually girls who are school teachers. Sometimes guys are school teachers, but it's a lot more rare.
As a teacher, can you explain what a day looked like? It was boys and girls of all ages in a classroom?
Yes, it was boys and girls from the ages of 6 to 13 or 14. So they started school when they were almost 6 or just turned 6, and they ended school when they were 13 or almost 14 or just turned 14. So the sixth graders were first, or the 6-year-olds were first graders, and then the 13, 14-year-olds were eighth graders. So I would get up, school starts at 8:30. our Amish school, the Swartzentruber Amish school, starts at 8:30 and ends at 3 o'clock from Monday to Thursday. On Fridays, it usually starts at 9 o'clock and ends at 2 o'clock. Now, my siblings went to a different school than I was teaching. There were two Amish schools in my community. The one my siblings went to was just across the pasture, maybe a mile, and the one I taught at was back in Missouri, where like right by where we used to live. The first up until I was 10 years old, so I had to drive like 4 miles every morning with a horse and buggy to get there. So I would get up, make breakfast, pack lunches. We would eat breakfast around 6:30. Then my dad and any of the boys that were out of school or done with school would leave for work. They would usually walk up the road about half a mile and work on a sawmill. And
What do you do in a
then
sawmill?
my dad has been a sawyer his whole life. Like he cuts lumber, makes railroad ties, grate lumber, furniture lumber, all of that stuff. Like they do a lot in the Amish do a lot in the lumber world. A lot of the lumber you buy,
Mm.
good quality lumber you buy, comes from Amish people.
So your
Um,
father was a physical laborer.
they're all physical laborers. Yeah, there is no like non no non-physical jobs, I would say, in an Amish community. Okay, so after breakfast, 6:30, the guys would head off to work. And then the boys that were still in school had to go to the barn, finish the chores, which consisted of milking the cows, feeding the sheep, feeding all the other animals like the chickens, gathering the eggs and everything. And we had to be all done by 8 o'clock. The breakfast dishes had to be done. I was a school teacher, so I had to be out of the house by 7:30. So usually, right after breakfast, around 7 o'clock, I would head upstairs and get dressed, get changed into my school outfit because I had an everyday outfit and a school outfit. So the school outfit was the same as every day. It was just usually different color and usually in better condition. So I would get dressed, and the boys would have the horse and buggy up at the hitching post in front of the house, and I would go out take my lunch, get out in the buggy, and by 7:30 I was off, and I was usually at the school by 7:50 ish. If I had a fast horse, it took around 20 minutes to do the 4 miles. If I had a slower horse, it was usually around 8 o'clock. I would get to school, unhitch the horse, tie him out on a long chain so he can eat grass all day, and then I would go into the schoolhouse. I'd have to unlock all the doors, put up all the window curtains, and if it's during the winter, I would have to get the fire going in a stove. Usually, I would bang it overnight, so I just have to stoke it. On a Monday morning, I had to start clean over. The schoolhouse was always freezing, but on like a regular weekday when it was not Monday morning, it was cold, but it wasn't like through the bones cold because the day before had been nice and like it would have been nice and warm. So I would usually stoke the fire if it was during the winter. If it was not during the winter, I was then ready. I would usually open windows, and I was then ready to just sit at my desk and wait until the students got there. Usually I graded papers or read a book or some got stuff ready for the day. And then the students would start showing up. They were all there by 8:30, and then school would start. For school to start, there was a big bell, like they have that bell house on top of the schoolhouse, and the rope goes down right to the teacher's desk at the end of the schoolhouse. You have one big desk for the teacher to sit at, and then each
The
student
whole
gets a small.
sorry, the
What
whole
was that?
school is one room.
Yep, the whole school is one room. A lot of schools, and that one did have like an entryway closet where all the kids, like there were shelves, one shelf for the girls, one shelf for the boys, and then there were rows of hooks, one row for the girls, one row for the boys, where they would put all their lunches and their hooks. And then for water, each family had to bring their own like big water jug to drink out of. Like each family usually consisted of 3 to 5 kids, and so they had to bring their own water jug to drink water out of. And so there was like a little table in the entry where they all set their water jugs on, and then they just
Oh.
drink out of those once they're done. There's no running water at school. And so the
Teacher room.
schoolhouse room is one room, and then they have the entryway usually. So I would ring the bell. They would all come. Each student sits in their little desk, and they're all facing me in my big desk at the end of the schoolhouse. And then for the next 15 minutes, from 8:30 to 8:45, we would usually sing 3 songs out of our German singing books. Like we would have 3 different people leading, and I'm usually like all the students take turns to lead, and I would usually be the one uh, that kept track of it all and told the people or told the students which one to lead. Then they would announce what song they want to lead, and they would have to sing the first word of every line. They would have to sing that by themselves, and then everybody else would join in, and they would all sing one line together, and then it started over. Every line like that usually went
Can
from
you
it.
sing a little?
Yeah, what's that?
Can you sing a
Oh,
little?
can I sing a little? Okay, their singing sounds very sad in my opinion. So this is one song that they would sing at funerals. They sang it a lot at school too, but they would usually sing it at funerals. It goes, "Lift free song," and so on and so on. It's so very sad. That song you can actually find on YouTube if you search a "Lift free song." It'll come up. It's, in my opinion, when I listen to it now, it's very sad. And when I was Amish, it was very sad too. But I loved the song. I still love the song. Still love the song. But we would sing like that for about 15 minutes, and then for the singing, we had what we called upper graders and lower graders. The upper graders were from 5th grade to 8th grade. The lower graders were from 1st grade to 4th grade. And so the first, second, and usually third graders would go sit with the upper graders in their desk, or like go stand with them, so the upper graders could help them sing, like teach them how to sing, help them find their pages and everything. And so as soon as the songs were done, they would all go to their seats. Everything is quiet as a mouse because the only one that can speak out loud is the teacher. And then they would start reading. Their reading lessons consist of, the usually first and second graders had to study their reading, so they had to like study the reading they were doing so they know all the words. So the teacher would announce uh what they have to study, like which pages they have to study, and then the teacher would start having reading classes from 8th grade down, because they usually did 1st grade last, so they would have time to study for reading. And they just come up, each student has their book. There's a bench at on the other side of the desk. Like I'm sitting on one side, there's a bench on the other side, and they all sit on that bench. And then they take turns standing up and reading a paragraph. Like each student has to read one paragraph, no matter how short or long. Sometimes it's one word, sometimes it's 2 pages. Had to read that all, and they just took turns until they had read whatever the teacher wanted them to read, or however much the teacher wanted them to read, and then they would put their bookmarks in the books and go back to their seats. And if they had lessons from the day before that they had to get done, they would do that. If not, they would read books or entertain themselves doing crafts or something like that. But they had to be quiet, always being quiet. And for the lower graders, like the first and second graders, when they were studying their reading, if they didn't know a word, there was usually one upper grader, usually 7th or 8th grader, who would help them, where they would tell them their words. Like the first and second graders would lift their hands, the 7th or 8th grader would go over and they'd be like, "What's this word?" And they would tell them. So the 7th and 8th graders often helped with the other students, because there's so many, there's only one teacher. So then by the time all the reading was done, it was usually around 10 o'clock. And then at 10 o'clock, when you're ready for the classroom to be dismissed, the teacher says, "Put your books down," and all the students' stuff, all their stuff into their desks, like put it away. And then once everything is away, the teacher says recess, and they just take off and run out to the entryway and get into their lunch boxes and grab a snack, and out to the playground they go. Oh no, I'm not good with these. And they would be out on the playground for 15 minutes playing a game. Usually they have so many games that a lot of non-Amish kids wouldn't play, and they would play that game. It's usually something with one it person chasing everybody around and getting them it too. For 15 minutes, and you ring the bell, everybody goes to the bathroom, takes a drink of water, goes back to their seats, and until 11:30, we do arithmetic. Every grade has to do their arithmetic. There again, they come up to the desk, they sit on their bench, and the teacher explains all the arithmetic lessons to them, and then they go back to their seats and they do their chops. And at 11:30, school dismisses again. Put your books down. Noon, and they rush out. They grab their lunch boxes. If it's summer, they sit outside. If it's winter, they sit in their seats and they eat their lunches out of their lunch boxes. Usually takes around 15 minutes, and then they go put their lunch boxes away, and out to the playground they go until 12:30, and they play a game until 12:30. Teacher rings the bell. They come back into their seats, use the bathroom, drink water first, go back into their seats, and then for the next 15-ish minutes, the teacher usually reads what's called a noon story, where they read out loud from a book, just an innocent book that is safe for all ages. They read an interesting story out. And that was my favorite part of the day because I got I got to read out loud. I loved reading, and I loved reading out loud specifically. So I loved that part, and my students did too. And sometimes, if we after noon story for 15 minutes until 12:45, we would have noon story, and then we did our English lessons, where all the students again, grade by grade, come up to the desk. I teach or show them their English lessons, explain it all to them, and they have to go back to their seat and finish it. And then sometimes, if everybody was like cooperating, like it wasn't a hard lesson, everybody like did it easier, we would have extra time because school let out again at 2 o'clock for another 15-minute recess. And sometimes it would only take an hour to do the 8 grades of English, so we would have an extra 15 minutes left before recess. So sometimes we would let recess go out early, so we would dismiss recess at 1:45 instead of 2 o'clock, and then school would resume at 2 o'clock instead of 2:15, and then we had to do our spelling lessons. It was just they alternated. Mondays they had oral spelling, Tuesdays they had written spelling, Wednesdays they had oral spelling, Fridays they had written spelling, and then or Thursdays they had written spelling, and then Fridays they always had all German lessons. So Fridays were way different than any of the other days, and they would do their spelling lessons was oral lessons. It was always very easy, and they all had to study. Every grade had to study their spelling, so they had to study their words that they're supposed to spell, so they know how to spell them. And then once the grades are ready, the teacher was ready to give them their spelling. And if it was written spelling, they would all stay in their seats, and the teacher would do grade by grade, would read out the word from their spelling book, and they couldn't have their spelling book. They had to have a little notebook and a pencil, and they had to write the word out. And then you graded them on whether or not they wrote the word right, or like wrote the word correctly. For oral spelling, you didn't do any grading. They just came up to the desk, and you gave them the word, and they had to spell it out. And for a lot of Amish kids, spelling is one of the easiest lessons to do. But after spelling, then school wouldn't dismiss until 3 o'clock. Sometimes we had extra time because if we would do recess at 2 o'clock, we only had 45 minutes to do spelling. If we would do recess at 1:45, we would have an hour to do spelling, and then sometimes we had extra time before or until 3 o'clock. Like sometimes we had 15 minutes of extra time, and then they would all be like, noon story, and they all wanted me to read out of the book and have my noon story before they went home. So that happened a lot when I was a teacher, just because I feel like when you know how to teach someone, especially a child, they look forward to learning. A lot of children look forward to learning, and learning gets very easy for them. When they're having fun with learning, everything goes much smoother. And I feel like that happened a lot when I was a teacher, just because I loved teaching them and they had fun learning it. So that happened a lot, where we would read extra. And then after 3 o'clock, it's books down, put your books down, and then you're dismissed. And explosion. Everybody runs to the entryway, gets dressed, grabs their lunchbox and their empty water chuck, and off they go to home. They all walk home. And then I had to close the windows if it was during the summer, bank the fire if it was during the winter. And also, usually, if it was during the winter, usually like right before I would dismiss them, I would have the oldest boys go out to the woodshed and bring in wood, because I had to bank the fire. So they always had to fill up the wood box in the evening before they could go home. And so I would
they cut the wood themselves?
No, nope. The
It was already
fathers
cut.
of, yeah, the fathers of the school children would have to make sure the woodshed stayed full. So they would, I would bang during the winter. I would bang the stove. During the summer, I would close all the windows, put down the window curtains. During the winter, I also had to put down the window curtains. I would lock the doors and get dressed, get all my stuff, go out, hitch up the horse, and then I was off home too. And usually, I was home by 4 o'clock in the evening. I would come home, get changed into my other everyday clothes. I would make supper. We would eat supper usually around 6 o'clock, and then after supper we had to uh, wash all the dishes. And the guys would come home for like right around. We would eat supper based on when the guys got home from the sawmill, and the boys that were school age had to do the chores again in the evening, like milk the cows, feed all the animals and stuff. And then the guys would come home from the sawmill. We would eat supper, and then all the boys would go sit in the living room, read, do whatever, and the girls would do the dishes every night, do the dishes and sweep the kitchen. And once that was all done, we would do our bedtime prayers where the whole family gathers in the living room, closes the doors, and they all kneel down. And the dad recites a prayer from one of their prayer books that is generations old. And then after that, you're free to go to bed. And sometimes, if it gets really late, you are forced to go to bed because you have to go to bed in time for you to get up the next morning at 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock is
So
so early.
that was during the winter. During the summer, it wasn't quite so easy. After the supper dishes were done, you had to go out and work in the fields and work in the garden until it got dark, and then you had to come in. You had to take a sponge bath, and then you were ready to say your prayers and go to bed. And usually during the summer, it would go till 11 ish o'clock until you got to bed. During the winter, you were usually in bed by 10 o'clock. So it was from 10 to 5, you got 7 hours of sleep. That was a lot better than getting 5 hours of sleep during the winter
Yeah.
or during the summer. I have my whole life needed sleep in order to not get sick. Like, I know if I get tired, I get sick, and I get sick very rarely. One time I remember that was the winter after we had moved to Iowa. So I was 10 years old. It was in January. It was cold, like it was below zero. It wasn't going above zero. It didn't go above zero for like 2 weeks. It was in January, like the end of January, beginning of February, and I got sick. I was like deliriously sick. Like, I was running around the house without knowing it's sick, and talking about stuff without, like, talking about certain things that never happened and would never happen. Delirious. Like, I was sick. My fever was up there. And I lost out on a whole week of school because I was that sick. And they ended up giving me. Amish get very creative when it comes to using serious medicines. So because they raise so many animals, they always have like animal, like penicillin, and animal lung, like pneumonia pills and stuff like that on hand. So my dad had penicillin on hand that he usually gave to sheep if they got sick, and he took his penicillin, he got a syringe, and or not a syringe, like a one of those. It's not one with a needle, like the syringe
Yeah, I
thing
get
without a
it.
needle.
It's like you put it in
Uh,
your mouth.
Filled it up and stuck it in my mouth and squirted it. It was nasty, but the next day I was better. It's like they don't go that far if they don't have to, but if they have to, they do. Like, they will go to lengths for a person to get better without going to the hospital. Like, the hospital is their last resort. And I have never heard of an Amish couple taking a kid to the hospital because of the flu, even if it was very severe. So
Wow.
I remember several times growing up, I would take animal products to get better because our herbs and stuff just weren't kicking it in the butt. So, yeah,
Incredible.